Hello and welcome into my studio. My name is Wendy Anderson and I'm excited to guide you through this really easy and fun little painting. So I want you to grab your supplies and get ready and make sure to leave a like, subscribe, comment, all that stuff, especially if you appreciate the content. It just helps me as a creator and I really appreciate it. Thanks so much and let's dive in. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Again, we're just using 8x10 wrapped canvas, 3 simple paint brushes, a 1-inch flat, a 1/2-inch flat, and a 4 round. And then I have the primary colors plus black and white using Liquitex Basics. Now, all of those things are linked in my supply guide, which can be found in the description. You could also grab some extra colors of paint if you want to not have to mix everything or just have some brighter shades. You could grab things like aqua green or purple or whatever. You know, you don't have to, I don't do it, but some people do ask about it. So I'm just going to mention it. Again, I'm going to use the big 1-inch flat brush first and make sure you have your cup of water. I'm going to put the water in there, or the brush in the water, get it nice and wet. And then we're going to practice our brush strokes with water. Now at the top of the canvas, I'm going to be doing a cross stroke. So that's just like a simple little X side to side, little diagonal brush strokes that crisscross each other. And just to get the paint on, that's the top. Now the bottom, we're going to go just horizontal. So you can just rub side to side like that. So get a little bit of moisture on your canvas. I'm in a hot climate, so moisturizing my canvas tends to help for me, or even mixing a little bit of water into your paints in advance, like just a tiny bit, can help your blending. So if you're using those acrylics, this is just something that the acrylic paint is just, it is kind of dry and it dries fast. All right, so we're going to start with a very light shade of turquoise. So I'm going to take blue with a touch of yellow and a lot of white. So notice how the more white you add, that brighter that color gets. This looks really pretty. Mine's leaning towards like almost a mint green, but it's still in turquoise land. Right. Now, just for the sake of, your mind, you can come to the center of the canvas and make a little horizontal line. That way you know the top is above this and the bottom is below. Below we have some water, and in the top we have a sky. So I'm just going to do those crisscross brush strokes up here and get the top colored in with that really light shade of turquoise, which again is just blue with some yellow, and then add as much white as you need to get it as light as you want. Everyone's shades are still going to look a little different. So even if you buy the exact same paint I'm using, you're probably going to mix it a little differently than I do, and that's okay. Now I'm going to take this color, maybe add a little more blue and yellow and less white to the bottom part. Make it just a little darker, and right under in the middle, I'm going to go side to side just like this and meander. Maybe add a little more blue as I go down. See how if I add a little more blue, our color gets a little darker, and we're just going to go side to side. The bottom's going to be more filled in, and the middle is not so much. And then you can always go back to that lighter color too, just add more white and just add in a little bit. You should see a couple shades, and we'll add more layers as we go anyways, so don't stress about it. Side to side. And again, at the bottom, we should be seeing more blue. We can still have a touch of yellow. And pull it all the way across at the bottom. Now, once we have that little bit of a darker shade on the brush, we can just tap it at the top. So see how I can just tap a little bit? Don't go in the center, just go around the edges. I'm just going to tap a little bit, little texture. Let it be textured like that. So I'm not like filling it in all the way. Little bit, both sides. Not in the middle, just on the sides. Maybe even through the center just a bit, maybe a little more white. Maybe just change the shade a little bit so that it looks like maybe there's some foliage back there. So this is the fun thing about painting. We could just use our imagination and create all these different, whatever this is. make it up. Make it up as we go. Now we want to get some dark elements in here as well. So for our darker shades, we could be using our black, but we could also use our purple with no white added. I'm going to use a little bit of black though first, just to get it really dark, and then we'll soften it a little bit if we need to. So clean your square brush. Let's clean that thing off. Just gonna clean it and dry it. So I don't want it to be too wet as we layer here, because that can get a little weird. Now what I'm gonna do is take some blue with a little bit of black. And that's gonna give me a really dark color. Blue and black. I love the blue black. It's like one of my favorites. Now again, this is gonna be our middle, the middle of the canvas. So just kind of paint a line on either side of that, those light colors that we did. I'm not taking it all the way through the middle, but I do want to tap up a little bit of that dark color on the sides, just a little bit. Just using the corner, you're just dabbing. Just a bit, just a bit. And then we're gonna go ahead and take this dark color in on the sides, like so. So notice I'm using the edge of the brush and I'm just tapering the line by releasing pressure as I get closer to where I want my line to stop. So for example, here I'll just pull over a bit and then let that line taper. It's just a really fun way to get those texture in there. Remember to mix that blue in because it's going to give it a softer look than just having the pure black. So soften it a bit. And then maybe as I come down here, I pull it in a little more. Make it look like there's like a little piece of land that comes in a little more here. You know, this is where we get to really play. Blue and black, little streaks coming from the sides. Now, at this point, we want to make sure we don't see any empty canvas. So again, we've tapped up a little bit of dark colors atop the horizon line here. And we have our edges pulled in a little bit with this dark color. You can even pull some of this dark color on the bottom edges, just softly, to darken it. And if it looks too harsh, just add a little more blue because the blue will help soften this color. I'm gonna pull it in a little more at the top. All right. So now that we have that, let's take a little breather. We're gonna put the brush away, the big one, and I'm gonna go into my small round brush, and I wanna make a little moon in the top middle section. So we're gonna go right in the center, this right here, and I'm gonna add a moon. Now you can go smaller than this or bigger. I'm gonna actually go a little smaller. So you could use anything, whether it's a cup, so you have this cup right here, but I could also grab like a paint lid. So I'm just gonna use the paint lid from one of the paints I showed you. So my turquoise paint. And sometimes be careful when you pull it off, you're gonna have a lot of paint in there. But see how this color is really similar to the color we mixed over here. So just showing you. Now what I can do is just use, it should stay because it's kind of thick, but I'm just going to dip the small brush in white. I'm going to put this where I want my moon, right in the middle, right here. And then you're just going to outline it with white. So it should be pretty centered. And it's centered in the top. And then just go around with the small round brush and paint in your moon. There we go. So now that you have that in, I do suggest, you know, coloring it in, but you don't have to color it in all the way. One thing that's fun about painting moons is that you can make it more like a crescent moon, or you can just give it some moon craters. It doesn't have to be like a solid color, but it can be. So I want you to do what you like. And then if you say I wanted a crescent moon, or I got, like, notice I have some smudges around the edges, no big deal. Just come back to your color that you made, your turquoise that we made in the beginning. The very light turquoise that we made. So make sure you try to get it similar. It doesn't have to be exact. You won't notice too much if it's not exact, but you want to get it as close as you can. Sometimes having it a little different is fun because it will add some little nuance to it. So don't feel like it's like wrong or bad to do that. Let's see how I can come in and clean up the edges. And I can also paint in and make it into a crescent moon. So see, I can paint over the white and give it more of a crescent. I'm going to do a crescent. That's because I like the crescent moon. So that's just what I want to do. But this is where we get to do what we want, you know, and our painting is, everybody's is different. So do not feel like you have to do that. Just dabbing. Just to kind of blend it in a bit. Now, if you need to go back and add more white, do it. And just clean your brush. I'm going to go back and add a little more white back in. And then don't forget about the texture. It's kind of fun to add. Just little dabs pulling towards the center of the circle shape, but really soft. So as I get towards the middle, it gets more faint. And if you don't get it as you're doing it, you always can go back and forth between the background color and the white so that you can get it how you want. But it should look a little crisper and brighter around the edge. And then it should get a little softer as you pull in towards the center of the moon shape. You can even do this with your finger. So like maybe you get a little bit of white on your finger and just tap it like this. That can give you some fun little texture. So I just want you to experiment, because sometimes doing it with the brush is just like, I don't know, maybe one day you're just like, this is not working today, just doing it this way. So I always invite people, like, don't get frustrated or give up or feel like you're not capable just because one technique didn't work for you. That's kind of crazy, because that doesn't mean that nothing's going to work for you. So I'm going to take that color with the small brush. I'm going to go through the middle and add some highlights. So we're just going to come through and then just sweep back and forth. And notice how it's this like bright color from above. I'm just taking it all the way down. And you can even do some like light blue. So maybe you want to change up the highlight color a little bit. Doesn't have to be pure white or like turquoise. It could be any color, any shade. Just want it to show up like a highlight. So make sure it looks a little brighter than the background color that you're putting it on. And anything's going to work. But even pure white or very, very, very white is going to be beneficial to get in there in some of your layers. So I just added a little more white to the brush and then put it in. So you really want to have several layers that create like a fun highlight in the water. So fun. All right, so now we have really our base layers and the moon. which is a great little focal point. And now we're going to create our, we're going to do some tree branches and all of that. I do want to add some purple first because sometimes people think you have to add your trees before you add the foliage, but that's not entirely true. So let's add some foliage actually first. I'm going to make sure that my medium square brush is clean. I want to work with the medium square brush, my 1/2-inch square brush. And we're going to use purple. We're going to make purple now. Okay, so I'm going to start with like a little bit of a darker shade. We're just using red and blue mixed together. Now heavier on the red is going to yield more of a plum purple. Heavier on the blue is going to be like more of a cool purple, like a blue violet. Kind of just going in the middle. And then I'm going to tap on top in this dark area right here with that purple. Just tap down below. Maybe you add a little bit of this down here too, so I can tap a little bit of purple because we're going to add some purple. And having this dark purple backdrop is going to help the purple look more vibrant when we add our lighter shades to it. You'll see what I mean in a second. Now I'm going to add some white and more red. So again, this purple is not going to look as vibrant as you could get it with getting purple pre-mixed. It's just, or I have a video on purple that talks about which shades of blue and red make the most vibrant purple. Your primaries are not the most vibrant, but they're decent. So that's why I use them. So see, I can take this medium shade of purple and I'm just creating this backdrop on the sides of purple. Really get it filled in on the corners. And then as you pull towards the moon, tap the corner of the brush and let it be more sparse so that it's not as dense. And that's going to be what makes it look like foliage. I'm going to do that on both sides. Now maybe I add a little more red, a little more white. Change your shade just a little bit as you go because it's going to just help it look a little more interesting. So maybe it's a little lighter over here on the left. Really dense on the side and then really sparse as we pull out towards the moon. Notice how you can take that over the dark shade that we put and it just kind of blends down into the darker color. It's so fun. I love doing this. All right, so now that we have our first base coat of the purple, let's do a second coat where we add more red and white. Now notice the difference from these shades here to this. This almost looks pink, but when it's added to your dirty brush and layered on top of the darker shades, it's still going to come up as purple. It's just going to look lighter. So let's do it. I'm just putting it on top a bit. And I want to keep this color a little closer towards the moon and don't cover your first layer all the way. It's so fun to do this. I never get bored with painting because I don't know, it's always different and it's just so much fun if you let it be. So if I have any people out there who do let painting stress them out, or if they get in their head a lot about it, which might stop you from actually doing it. Let's see how I can do like little tiny dabs as I pull out. I invite you to really be in the process. Really just be in the process. Don't be in the end result. That's my best guide for myself. Like my best thing that's helped me the most is to just be in the process. Don't worry about the outcome. Don't compare to anything you've done or others have done. Just chill. Okay, you can always go back to like some darker colors, go back and forth a bit. I will add more, but I actually want to do my darker colors first. So what I'm going to do is clean that brush, and I'm going to show you a couple things you can do. We're going to do a little bit more with the square brush, then we'll move into the small brush. But I'm going to come in with some black. And I'm going to go ahead and add some tree branches coming up into those the foliage that we did. But before we do that, I'm going to add a little bridge. So the bridge is going to go from one side of this little creek to the other. And I'm just making a rainbow shape. And then maybe I'm going to make like a bottom to it. So I'm going to pull it down lower. Next, I'm doing 2 parallel rainbow shaped lines. The next one's going to go a little lower. Keep it parallel. Maybe make it a little bit thicker. And then when you do the little railing to the bridge, keep your lines vertical. So start in the middle and make an actual vertical tap with the edge of the brush. And then as you come down, you're going to just keep with that and keep them separated. Don't start bending those lines. They should be moving vertically the whole time. And then you can do another little line next to those. It's like a little bit closer to each one. So I'm just going right in front of each one and making an even softer tap. Like maybe that's further away. And we'll do some highlighting to help make the bridge look a little better too. And then I'm going to pull some like maybe little foliage down here. So little upward flicks of like grass along the creek. It's going to look cool with this dark color with the black. And then you can even darken some of the edges with some black. So even though we did blue and black over here, I can like darken up some of the edges. We really want it to look kind of dark. And then we can go over the trees here with some branches. So I'm just going to use coming up to the horizon line right where the bridge is. And we're going to take some little brush strokes that pull up into the purple. Now I like to do with the trees, if you painted with me before, you might know this, like a Y shape pattern. Notice how I just made a Y. And then your lines always want to be a little thicker and then get thinner as you get to the tip. And then you can add little Ys coming off of your bigger Y shape. And then off those little Y shapes, you can add even tinier Y shapes. So it just keeps kind of going. And you can pull another Y off of a bigger Y. So it's just a bunch of Ys. Do that on both sides. Now, sometimes the black doesn't flow very well, so you can dip the tip of the brush in the water and then just pat your brush nice and flat. And just make sure you get that paint on the edge, and notice how sharp my edge is. So you're keeping those bristles pulled together. So if you don't have a flat brush like that, if it's all bristled up like this one is, it might not be the best brush to do branches with, okay? There's ways to repair this. If you have a bushel brush, I'll have a video about that soon. But I would, if you don't have it repaired at the moment, I mean, go with your nicest, sharpest brush for this, for doing this. And then if you want to get some more wiggly lines or just adding some more, you can always go into your round brush. Just make sure your round brush is pointy and you're going to roll the brush into the black. Roll the tip softly, so it's like roll motion instead of a patting. And then you can always go in and add like a little more wiggly brush strokes. So a lot of times I tell people it's not, the little brush isn't necessarily going to get your lines thinner. It's just going to allow you to get more really wiggly lines. And you still have to be really careful though, because it can still get away from you. You can, if you push too hard or you have too much paint, even if you're using a small brush, it's not going to be the solution to your line problem if you are having a problem with your thin lines. And I do have a video about making thin lines. It tends to be an issue for people. Then you can always have some like more little wigglies coming out of the ground here, maybe like some small little trees or further off. Just really keeping those brush strokes, and you can add some more of that grass with the smaller brush. And add some more dark around the corners at the bottom, little swooshes. You really want to just do whatever feels fun. And then we can do some highlighting. And so, for example, if you feel like your bridge got too thick, I feel like the line at the top of my bridge got too thick, and I'm not really like, it's too thick. But I'm not stressed because I know I can paint over it with a highlight and make it look a lot thinner. So I'm just going to use that background color, that turquoise. So again, you got blue, a little bit of yellow, and then a lot of white to make that light turquoise. And I'm using the brown brush. I cleaned it off. And then I can just go in and paint on top of the bridge. Now it's like a highlight, but you could also just paint over it to make it kind of blend with the background, but it will end up looking a lot thinner, whether you just highlight it or paint over it a little bit. Kind of painting over mine a little bit. And then you can highlight the bridge. So maybe I just kind of go in between those little rail brush strokes to put the highlight on the bottom of the bridge. So you can kind of paint over those a bit. Let's see how it looks a little bit nicer now that it's not so bulky looking. The highlight really helps. And then you can always clean the brush and go back into the black if your highlight gets too crazy or it gets a little wonky in some spots, which mine kind of did. So I always just go back and forth and do what my painting needs. And then you can even use some pure white to highlight the top. Make it look a little more glowy. And then again, make sure you have a lot of that white highlight in the water. And then maybe even add a little more to the moon to make it look a little brighter, especially around the far edge. And then we can go in and add more to the purple. So let's go into that light purple. And again, it's just more red and white for the light purple. And then you can go in and add some even brighter little dabs to the branches really close to the moon. So technically you want those trees to look brighter as it gets closer to the moon, because that's what would happen in reality. The moon is going to shine onto the foliage and going to make it look brighter the closer it gets to the light source. But we can have some like little removed dabs of paint floating around. I can go back into that darker purple. Maybe I add some little purple things down here, little purple flower type things down below in this space. And then again, more red and white to create a lighter shade. Go back and forth. Make sure each, if anything doesn't look as bright as you wanted it to, add more red and white and add a second coat. So sometimes you just have to add more than one coat. I mean, it can be a little like, oh, you want to just have it be done, but it's a layering process. And then again, some of these little dabs can just be removed altogether, kind of floating in the air, which I think looks really pretty. And you can even just do some pure white. So maybe you have some like pure white in there. like really close to the edge, or just like a super even lighter shade. So the further you take that light shade, the more different layers and colors you're gonna get, and it'll look fun. You don't have to, but it's just a preference. Maybe you want that. I'm gonna add some little white dabs on top of these things down here. Maybe you use some of that, go back to some of the darker shade of purple, and you can highlight the bridge. Really anything that you need to add, go for it. Gonna add a little more dots in here with the purple down below. And again, you can even use just like a pink or a very, very light purple. So the pink, again, the red and the white really makes that look lighter. It's still gonna look purple though, because you will have a touch of blue in there. And if you don't like how any of your little dabs turned out, just paint over them with the black. So I'm gonna have some black, and I can be like, I don't really want that there. And get rid of some stuff. You can add more little reeds, little like grass reeds over here. The more intricate it looks, the more, I always tell people, the more like love and intricacies you put into there, as long as you're having fun with it, that's a key point. And the more interesting it's going to end up looking. So if you just kind of give up on it and just go, oh, whatever, it's usually not going to have as much magic as if you really put a lot of love into it. So I invite you to put as much love into it as you can. I'm going to let it go though, because I like to keep these two little tutorials pretty short, but we have a crescent moon, a little bridge, some trees, and some flowers down below. Really fun combination of turquoise and purple. Those colors look really cool together. So hopefully you enjoyed. Make sure to leave a comment, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. It just helps the content get seen. People then therefore hopefully get to enjoy painting. Or maybe they'll be inspired to try it. And that's why I like to keep them short and simple, because it's so easy. Anybody can do it. So I hope you painted along. Again, thank you so much for watching, and have a beautiful rest of your day. Bye.